Thank you for joining us this evening. Please turn to Psalm number 35 as we continue our study in the book of Psalms this evening, continuing in particular the early Psalms written by David. And last time we discussed at some length the Psalm number 34, in which David was talking about how that God shows favor to and hears the prayers of those who are righteous, but his face is against those who do evil. As we talked about then, what a person needed to do in order to be the kind of person who would receive God's blessings and have a good life, and talked about how they should keep the tongue from evil and depart from evil and do good and seek peace and so on. And then we began Psalm 35 last time, in which David is describing a circumstance, which he doesn't say exactly what it is, in which he was being mistreated by enemies who he thought were friends. They had been, he thought, cared for him, but in fact they misused him. They rewarded him evil for good. Talked about how that when they suffered, he was very grieved at that, but when they suffered, he was grieved. When he suffered, they would rejoice. And they hated him without a cause, he said. And that's where we were as we came down to verse 21, ready for verse 22 this evening. So questions or discussion anybody has on Psalm 35 through verse 21 before we proceed? Okay, let's go ahead and read the rest of the psalm together then, please. Let's read Psalm 35 and verse 22 through 28. Psalm 35, 22 to the end of the chapter. Who would like to read that for us, please? Bill, please.
This you have seen, O Lord. Do not keep silent, O Lord. Do not be far from me. Stir up yourself and awake to my vindication, to my cause, my God and my Lord. Vindicate me, O Lord, my God, according to your righteousness. And let them not rejoice over me. Let them not say in their hearts, so we would have it. Let them not say we have swallowed him up. Let them be ashamed and brought to a mutual confusion. Who rejoice in my hurt, let them be clothed with shame and dishonor. Who exalt themselves against me. Let them shout for joy and be glad. Who favor my righteous cause, and let them say continually, let the Lord be magnified, who has pleasure in the prosperity of his servant. And my tongue shall speak of your righteousness, and of your praise all the day long.
Okay. So David continues describing the consequence, and we mentioned last time that we don't know for sure what group of people this was or individuals that were causing these problems for him. It may have been King Saul, who, though David had done so much good for, Saul turned against him. Or it may have been his son Absalom. The picture that I used as the illustration is supposed to artist's conception of David leaving Jerusalem because of Absalom's rebellion. But whatever it was, David was saying that he treated these people well, but they hated him without cause. So we continue discussing that, beginning in verse 22, then in question number 7. So what did David call upon God to do in verses 22 to 24? What did he ask God to do under the circumstances? Steve.
He wants God to defend him and tell him that God is the salvation.
Okay. All right. Other comments? Sharon.
It's an interesting contrast with the previous verse where David's enemies testify about what they saw, but they're lying. But in verse 22, God really did see, and David asked him to testify, and that will not go well for David's enemies.
Okay. All right, other comments? Rick.
Says, do not stay silent. Do not stay far away. Awake and vindicate me.
Okay. So he's wanting God to defend him, as Steve said, to vindicate him, that he was the one who was right in the situation. And we understand, I'm sure, how terrible that might be. And maybe you've had a situation like this where someone you thought you'd done very much good to, tried to help, and then they turn against you and try to hurt you. And making accusations against you as though you're the one who's wrong. And so justice is what you want. You want the God to take the side of the ones who did right, which in your case is you think. And so you want him to be, to take his position as a defending him so that the enemies, he says, cannot rejoice over him. Other comments to 24. Okay? So he continues then in verse 25, and we have question number 8. What's the end result going to be? And comparing the wicked to the righteous, and the end result in verses 25 through the end of the chapter. How does he compare them? What the end result is going to be? Susie?
That they'll be put to shame. Well, he asked for them to be put to shame and confusion and dishonor.
Okay, so they'll be put to shame, dishonor, whereas he is standing for what's right. Those who are standing for evil are going to be dishonored. They're going to be shown to be ashamed. They're the ones who are wrong. Okay? What else does he say in comparing them? Those who are wrong to those who are right. How about the end of the Psalm, verse 27 and 28? What does he say there about the righteous? Gary?
He says that they will shout for joy and be glad and continually say, let the Lord be magnified.
All right. So while you have the ones who are wrong, the enemies in this case, are the ones who are going to be ashamed and brought to confusion, dishonor. Those who are standing for the right will favor the one who is right, and they'll have joy and magnify the Lord. And so then verse 28, my tongue shall speak of your righteousness and praise all the day long. Okay, so basically it's a prayer as a psalm for justice. That because he'd done these people right and they'd mistreated him, he wanted God to demonstrate who was right. Now again, it would fit certainly David and his concern for Absalom or Saul, but also fit in many ways Jesus and the way he was mistreated after doing so much good to try to help other people, and yet he was crucified. Other comments or discussion on the 35th Psalm? Anybody? All right, we'll move then into the 36th Psalm. And in this psalm, continued concept of contrast, and God on the one hand and the workers of iniquity on the other hand. But let's go ahead and read it. Let's read the whole thing, 12 verses. Would you like to read Psalm 36 for us, please? Psalm 36, would you like to read that for us, please?
Neil.
Transgression speaks to the wicked. Deep in his heart, there is no fear of God before his eyes. For he flatters himself in his own eyes that his iniquity cannot be found out and hated. The words of his mouth are trouble and deceit. He has ceased to act wisely and do good. He plots trouble while on his bed. He sets himself in a way that is not good. He does not reject evil. Your steadfast love, O Lord, extends to the heavens, your faithfulness to the clouds. Your righteousness is like the mountains of God. Your judgments are like the great deep. Man and beast you save, O Lord. How precious is your steadfast love, O God. The children of mankind take refuge in the shadow of your wings. They feast on an abundance of your house, and you give them drink from the river of your delights. For with you is the fountain of life. In your light do we see light. O continue your steadfast love to those who know you, and your righteousness to the upright of heart. Let not the foot of arrogance come upon me, nor the hand of wicked drive me away. There are evildoers. There the evildoers lie fallen. They are thrust down, unable to rise.
Okay, so again we see the discussion of those who do evil and what happens to them as a result. But notice the question number 9. You look at the first 4 verses. He lists some characteristics of sinful people. You've seen several passages that list characteristics of those who serve God faithfully. Here's some characteristics of people who disobey God. So in those first 4 verses, tell us one example of a characteristic of the sinful people. Give us one thing there, Steve.
Lack of the fear of God.
All right, they don't fear God. Last part of verse 1. Now notice, remember all the times we've talked about how fearing God is so important. To have a respect for God. Obviously, in case of you're a sinner, you're going to also have the fear of punishment, but in general, everybody needs to fear God in the sense of respect, but these people don't have that respect. They don't fear God. That's one characteristic. What are some other characteristics there of in those first 4 verses? Rick.
He's full of self-pride.
All right, pride. Looks upon himself as being important, flatters himself in his own eyes, it says. Okay? What else? How's the wicked man described? Steve?
Blind conceit.
Okay, conceit. Susie?
He doesn't think that his sin will be found out or hated. I take that by God, maybe by others too.
Okay. Let's see. What verse was that? 2. Okay. Good word. Okay. Other comments? Other problems with the wicked person?
In verse 4 there it says he devises wickedness, so it's on his mind and he plans it out ahead of time.
All right, so think about this. You know, some people do sin by almost just incidental. It just happens, a situation comes up, they give in to a temptation and they sin. But that's not these people. These people are plotting, they're planning to do evil. And they think about it ahead of time and they deliberately set themselves in a way that is not good. Okay? So there's deliberate planning, malice of forethought, we might say. Did I see another hand? Another characteristic of them? Okay? So at the conclusion of verse 4 it says he doesn't abhor evil. And there's the bottom line problem. Evil is not a bad thing to this person. And we talked about that before, haven't we? That those who are righteous must hate evil and love good. You need an understanding of that it's important to do right. And it's tragic to do wrong. Until a person understands and appreciates that, then of course it's not going to bother them to do wrong because they don't think it's all that bad. Okay? All right. Other characteristics of the evil. All right, now I ask you as part of the assignment to give some scriptures on some of these. So anybody have a passage on any one of these? Steve?
In Proverbs 1, verse 7. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction.
All right, so true knowledge begins with the fear of the Lord. But these people don't fear the Lord. They're the foolish people who don't respect instruction and being taught about God and His way. Okay, other passages about these characteristics of these evil people. Susie.
What you were speaking about earlier, but Isaiah 32, verse 7, also the schemes of the schemer are evil. He devises wicked plans to destroy the poor with lying words, even when the needy speaks justice.
Okay.
The poor and needy.
And the misuse of opportunities to hurt people that are good people, but he doesn't mind hurting them. He's devising wickedness. Any other passages anyone wants to discuss here? All right, so obviously there's many passages we can look at these wicked people. Now here's God's description now of these wicked people. So question number 10 then, here's a contrast between these wicked people and God. So God is, His character contrast to that. So let's look at God's character in verses 5 through 8. What are some characteristics of God? Verses 5 through 8. What is he like, Karen?
He's faithful, he is righteous, his judgments are very deep.
All right, he's faithful. Verse 5, he's righteous. Verse 6, deep, good judgments. His decisions about right and wrong are proper decisions, in contrast to the wicked man. You see, he doesn't care about right versus wrong, but God always cares, and his judgments are right. Other characteristics of God in verses 5 through 8. Rick.
I like how he put this down through 5 through 8. Well, 5 through 9 actually. It says, your mercy, O Lord, your faithfulness, your righteousness, your judgments. You preserve man. How precious is your loving kindness. Under the shadow of your wings, everything is said towards God.
In contrast to the wicked person. So where the wicked person doesn't have these characteristics, but God does. God possesses these characteristics of mercy and faithfulness and righteousness and so on. Okay, other comments on the characteristics of God that we see in these verses, in contrast to the wicked person? Sharon.
The poetry in this section is really beautiful, intended to show us that God's love and mercy and faithfulness are overwhelming. They're compared to very high things like mountains and clouds in the heavens, or things that are huge and vast like oceans and flowing rivers. That they completely encompass us like a mother hen covers her chicks under her wings. This is a very big picture kind of thing. There's no specific application in David's life to exactly a time he's referring to, but if we serve God faithfully, he is absolutely and entirely there for us, and we can trust that.
Okay, and the last part of verse 7 then, the children of men put their trust under the shadow of your wings. Again, the illustration we've seen several times before, like a mother bird caring for her baby birds. So God cares for his people. We got to put our trust in him. Trusting in God, because he is the one that you can trust. You can't always trust people. Many times they'll betray your trust, or maybe they're not simply able to do what you need them to do. But God is there always if you trust him. We have to learn that we don't survive and deal with all of our problems all by ourselves. We need strength, and we need God, and we trust him. And we need to learn that. So here's this contrast. Here's wicked people are like this, but God's like this. Who are you going to trust? Where are you going to put your confidence? Okay? Any other comments through verse 8 on the characteristics of God? Steve.
Here we drink from the river, but in eternity we'll be carried up to the source.
Okay, could you say one more time, please, Steve?
So here we drink from the river, but in eternity we'll be carried up to the source.
Well, that's an interesting comment. Okay. Okay. God himself is the source, that we will actually be with the source when we're in heaven. Okay? Other comments? Okay? Let's see. Okay. So here you see the contrast. The wicked man does not fear God, speaks evil, and so forth, but God is faithful, righteous, just, and merciful. We can trust him for protection, life, and light. And then we finish the 36th Psalm. Question number 11. If God would listen and heed the request of David, what would the result be? What's going to happen in verses 10 through 12 if God accepts David's request and responds to him? What's going to be the result? Verses 10 through 12. Karen.
Well, at the end he says the workers of iniquity will fall, they will be cast down and not able to rise.
All right, so again, you see, in the end, who's going to be the victor and who's going to be the loser? Those who don't serve God think that they're doing well. They think things are good in many cases, that things are well with them. We're going to study the 37th Psalm. That's what it's all about. They seem to be prospering. Things seem to be doing well. But they don't understand the end result. People sometimes look at God and those who serve Him and think that there's no point in going that route. All you have to do, all that happens if you serve God is you don't have any fun. You don't be able to do the things that people like to do because there's sin involved. But God is the one who's right. And those who serve Him are going to turn out to be right in the end. So other comments on the outcome in verses 10 through 12 for those who serve God faithfully. Rick?
I like verse 11 there. It says, let not the foot of pride come against me.
Okay. Let not the foot of pride come against me. Comments on the idea of the foot of pride coming against me. Okay, put it with the last part of the verse. Let not the foot of pride come against me. Let not the hand of the wicked drive me away. Remember the parallelism in Hebrew poetry. The foot, the hand. In other words, here's an evil person. He's using what he's got to try to harm good people. The prayer of David is, don't let him use his abilities, his power, his strength to harm me. Don't let him be the winner. But let me be victorious through Jesus, through God. Okay. Other comments on those last few verses? Susie?
In contrast to what will happen to the wicked, the righteous will continue to figuratively drink from the fountain of life and be led in God's light and be the recipient of His loving kindness and righteousness.
Okay. Very good. And the same contrast we've seen so many times. And it's in our Psalms too, isn't it? Our songs, many of the songs that we sing, and we've just sung them this evening, that in the end, maybe not now, maybe not at this time, but in the end, we know the reward is there for those who are faithful, those who fear God and serve Him faithfully. Anything else on the 36th Psalm? Anybody? All right, let's start on the 37th Psalm then. Though I'm sure we won't be able to finish it this evening. Very challenging, long and thought-provoking, very challenging psalm. So let's read the first 11 verses. Let's just start with verses 1 through 11 in Psalm 37. Would you like to read Psalm 37, verses 1 through 11 for us, please? Psalm 37, verses 1 through 11. Susie.
Do not fret because of evildoers, nor be envious of the workers of iniquity, for they shall soon be cut down like the grass, and wither as the green herb. Trust in the Lord and do good. Dwell in the land and feed on His faithfulness. Delight yourself in the Lord, and He shall give you the desires of your heart. Commit your way to the Lord. Trust also in Him, and He shall bring it to pass. He shall bring forth your righteousness as the light, and your justice as the noonday. That's all.
11.
Rest in the Lord and wait patiently for Him. Do not fret because of him who prospers in his way, because of the man who brings wicked schemes to pass. Cease from anger and forsake wrath. Do not fret, it only causes harm. For evildoers shall be cut off, but those who wait on the Lord, they shall inherit the earth. And yet a little while, and the wicked shall be no more. Indeed, you will look diligently for his place, and it shall be no more. But the meek shall inherit the earth, and shall inherit themselves in the abundance of peace.
Okay. Now this psalm there's other psalms and other parts of Scripture that are similar to this. Especially Psalm 73, 37, 73. Very similar psalms. Both discussing a similar problem. What's the problem that David is concerned about in Psalm 37? What's bothering him? Rick?
One way is being envious of those that are getting rich, gaining in prosperity and everything in evil ways.
Yeah, okay. So it's the problem of, in this life, it looks like bad people are winning. it seems like it's to your advantage to be among the evil people, because they, and not always of course, but a lot of times they seem to prosper compared to those who are righteous, and righteous people sometimes suffer. So the question is, why? Why do good people suffer, sometimes even more than evil people? And why is it that the evil people seem to prosper? Why isn't it the other way around? Should it be the other way around? Good people should prosper and bad people should suffer. That's also a similar theme in the book of Job. And so we're going to see a number of aspects of that subject as we go through a very informative psalm. Okay? So he starts off in the first verse stating the question. Let's see, question number one, he says in verses 1 through 4 why we should not be troubled. But what are some reasons he gives in those first 4 verses why we should not fret because of people who do evil? Look at the first 4 verses. Karen.
It says they'll be cut down.
All right. They're going to be cut down. Okay. Other comments? Steve.
Success of the wicked is only temporary.
Okay. The thing is, you have to look at the long run. If all you look at is this life, sure enough, it does look like, in many cases, that the wicked people are prospering. I've got my illustration up here. You know, here this guy, he's got this fancy car, and he's got his own jet airplane and so on. And you know he's wicked because he's wearing all black. Okay, well, no, it's an illustration. But the point is, that's the way it sometimes seems in this life. That the good people are the ones who are winning. And they make their schemes and their plots to get rich and to enjoy life and have a good time and party and so whatever. And oftentimes they do it at the expense of those who are good people. And so, why is it that way? Well, we shouldn't worry about it because look at the long run. Don't just look at what happens for a while in this life. What about the long run? Okay? So that's one of the main lessons of the psalm, is wait and see the end result. Okay? What else does he say in those first 4 verses of why we should not fret or worry because of people who do evil? Let me ask the question another way. Sharon, go ahead.
Verse 3 says, because we're trusting in the Lord. And that last phrase, feed on his faithfulness. Some versions say cultivate faithfulness. CEB says farm faithfulness. It takes time. Faithfulness isn't something you just go out to the store and buy and now you've got it. You have to work at it, and like planting crops. It's going to take time to see the full victory and the full blessings that come from serving God.
Okay. All right. Let me put the question another way. Why is it that sometimes good people might envy evil people? What would lead us at times, if we're not thinking of the things properly as we should, that we do worry or get upset or even envy the people who do evil? What would lead to that kind of thinking? Susie?
I'm thinking that if our own attitude isn't focused on spiritual things, if we're more concerned about earthly things, then we can become envious of what others have, whether it be riches, families, jobs, lifestyles, anything, and we take our eye off of the kingdom and what's important.
Okay, so that brings up another aspect of it. Not only look at the long run, but look at the blessings that you do have now as a servant of God. But if your emphasis is on physical things, it looks like they've got it in many cases. It looks like the wicked people are the ones who are winning. That they've got, if all you're going to think about is the physical things, they've got them in many cases in comparison to what it seems like to us. Okay? But we need to realize what we do have, not just in eternity, but even now, are spiritual blessings. We have a relationship with God and all the spiritual good that comes with that. Okay? Why else might we tend to envy evil people or worry about them? Rick?
I don't know about envying evil people, but the evil people themselves, when they have all these earthly things, they tend to come around thinking, I did this myself.
Okay.
God, they completely blank God out of it altogether. Say, I did this.
Okay, so that's another aspect of the problem, is when we look at what we have achieved, our accomplishments, it may not seem like much compared to them. They look at what they've got, all these things that they've accumulated and their wealth and so on. They think they've done it. If we start thinking that way too, we think we're failures. They're the ones who are successful. Look at all they've accomplished. Well, I haven't accomplished that kind. And so we feel like we are the failures compared to them if we're looking at this life and material things. Any other explanations or comments on why we might tend to worry about or envy evil people? Sharon?
Sometimes it's not just that we don't have things. Sometimes what we do have is problems. And it's hard to deal with difficulties, with suffering, with maybe even being persecuted by the wicked people. Or family and loved ones are having problems because they're righteous. And for me at least, that's the time it's hardest for me to remember that I'm not supposed to be worrying.
Okay. And maybe close to that, from related to that, is to me is the idea of just justice. Where's the justice in this? When is it going to be made right? We're supposed to be doing what God says for us to do, and these people don't even care about what God says, and they're the ones who think are going, when is it going to be made right? When are they going to be punished? Or when it's going to become obvious who's right and who's wrong here? And so there's lots of reasons, it seems to me, why we may tend to be upset, worry, or envy those who are evil. Okay, but he says instead, verse 4, delight yourself in the Lord. Verse 5, commit your way to the Lord. Okay, other comments on those first 4 verses? Sharon?
I really love the contrast between verse 4 and verse 23. Verse 4 says, "If we trust God, we will delight in Him." Verse 23 says that when we're serving Him, God will delight in us.
Okay, all right, very good. Mutual fellowship, mutual relationship. Okay? Now, verse 5, question number 2, what will God do if we trust Him? But I want to look just specifically at verse 5 for a minute. Here in a nutshell is the solution. Now, we're going to see these kind of things again and again and again through the psalm. What's the solution to being upset when good people suffer and bad people look like things are going great? What's the solution? Verse 5. Karen?
Trust in the Lord.
Commit your way to the Lord and trust in Him. That's the answer. Now, there's a lot more to it we'll talk about, but the bottom line is, do you trust God? Do you really, really believe that God's in charge here? He knows what He's doing, and He's going to take care of this. That in the end, it's going to come out right for His people, and the wicked people are going to be punished. God's going to make it right. Do you trust that? Do you believe enough that you will commit your way to Him and say, okay, I'm going to do it God's way? And He's going to make it work out. He says He'll give the desires of your heart. That doesn't mean anything you want, He's going to give it. That's not what He means. He means that the solution to the problem that you're talking about here, you're going to have that solution if you put your faith and your trust in God. Okay? Other comments on verse 5? And we'll see more of it as we go along, but other comments? All right, furthermore, then a question number 2. Go down to verse 7. What are some things he says that, through 6 and 7 as well, to help us deal with this problem of worrying, being upset about evil people who prosper? verses 6 and 7. Steve.
God is in control and his justice will prevail.
Okay? God is in control. His justice will prevail. Okay? Other comments? Susie.
In the aspect of waiting patiently for Jehovah to act in his time and in his manner.
Okay, could you say a little bit louder, please, Susie?
The aspect of waiting patiently for God to work in his time and in his manner.
Okay. Verse 7. Wait patiently for him. And don't fret because of the one who prospers in his way, because the man who brings evil, wicked schemes to pass. Why? Because you're trusting in the Lord and waiting patiently for him. God will take care of it. If you trust him, you're convinced he's going to make it right in his time, in his way, and so you're willing to wait for that. Say, okay, I don't understand what's going on now. Maybe it doesn't even make sense to me why things are, wicked people are prospering and good people are suffering, but God's going to make it right. If I just wait for him, he'll take care of it. Okay? Patience. Rick.
I like how that verse starts out. It says, rest in the Lord. If we're resting in the Lord, there's no worry there. We're at peace.
Okay. Rather than being all upset about, what am I going to do about this? What am I going to do about this? God's going to take care of it. How about verse 6? How about verse 6? What does verse 6 teach us? Susie.
I take it says he will make your righteousness go forth as light and your justice as noonday. I understand that to mean that he will make others aware of your righteousness in whatever matter it is, compared to the wickedness.
Okay. And sometimes it's not just us who are upset because good people are suffering and bad people are prospering. Other people look and they say, well, these people must be the ones who are right because look at how well things are going for them, and you must be wrong, because look at the problems you've got. In the end, somewhere along the line, it's going to be clear who was right and who was wrong. And people may make fun of us for serving God. They have all throughout history. God's people have been ridiculed for serving God. But in the end, those who serve God are the ones who are going to be the victors. They're going to be the winners. Okay? Other comments to verse 7. All right, can you think of some examples in the Bible of people who had to learn this lesson in the Bible? People who were troubled by the suffering of good people and the prosperity of bad people. Bad people seem to be doing well and they're upset by it. Can you think of Bible examples of that? Anybody think of examples of that in the Bible? Karen?
Job. Job.
That's what the book of Job's about, isn't it? In particular, Job's the one who's suffering. Why? Why? This isn't right. This can't be right because I haven't done anything wrong. Why am I suffering? And the end result of the book is God doesn't answer the question about suffering. God just tells him, I'm in charge. I know what I'm doing. Don't turn against me. Don't criticize and condemn me. I'm in charge here. I'll take care of it. Okay? Any other examples you can think of? Susie?
Joseph.
Okay, you want to explain? Go ahead.
He was sold and he was despised by his brothers, and sold into slavery and suffered greatly, only for God to raise him up as second in Egypt and to actually save his brothers' families.
Yes. And we're not really told, at least I don't remember being told as the story goes on, what was going through Joseph's mind about all this. But you got to know he's wondering, what is going on here? But at the end, he's got to figure it out. He said, God allowed this to save the family from the famine. Okay, and we can give others. Think about it some more. We'll take our break. think about it some more for next time. Other Bible examples, we'll start in verse 8 then, and Psalm 37 the next time. Thank you.